please.
Welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm. This is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I am your host, Scott Dr. GX Goldfine. If you enjoy this programming, subscribe to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube, which is where Truth and Rhythm lives, and be an advocate by spreading the word among fellow funk, jazz, and R&B music lovers. Join Truth and Rhythm's membership program through Patreon. You can also submit a direct donation to the cause anytime at funkandstuff.net. At that site, you can also purchase the book Everything's on the One, The First Guide of Funk. Shop for official Truth and Rhythm and Funk and Stuff merchandise, and use the Amazon links for all of your online purchases, which allocates a percentage to this show. For those of you who go the extra step in supporting the show, you have my heartfelt gratitude for allowing us to continue to shine the light on those special artists whose quest is to find truth in rhythm. I am pleased to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership trumpet player Bennie Cowan, a member of the P-Funk Horns who has spent more than 40 years recording and performing with George Clinton and the Parliament-Funkadelic All-Stars, as well as many other notable artists. Among the albums he appears on are Parliament's Motor Booty Affair, Glory Howl's Stupid, and Trombipulation, Parlette's Invasion of the Booty Snatchers and Play Me or Trade Me, the P-Funk All-Stars, Urban Dance Floor Gorillas, George Clinton's Some of My Best Jokes Are Friends, and The Awesome Power of a Fully Operational Mothership, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers' Freaky Styley. Other artists he has lent his horn stylings to include the Gap Band, Bootsy, Mtume, Cameo, and Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers. Bennie, whose son Benzel Cowan has spent more than 10 years as P-Funk's primary drummer and has also been a Truth and Rhythm guest, released his own album called It's a Horn Thing G, which is right there.
It's a horn. Hey.
A few years back. Bennie, man, how are you? Thanks for joining the show.
Hey, I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Oh, man, so glad to have you. And you're in your home studio, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we do a little cutting down here.
Yeah. So, and for those who
we're working on a project now.
Oh, love to hear that. Yeah. So, for those who don't know, the Baltimore connection and funk runs deep, you know?
Absolutely.
Was there like about at least a dozen?
Generational.
Right? Yeah.
Huh?
At least a dozen like well-known funketeers from there, right?
Right, absolutely. And that's the thing that we're working on now. It's like I'm getting as many of those people, the Baltimore funk, into this Baltimore Funk Foundation thing that we're working on, community outreach for young musicians to get them the kind of things that in the inner city might not be available to them. That, like my son teaches lessons in the counties and but he gets paid for it. And you do that, you have to pay. So the foundation's going to help try to facilitate that for young musicians in the future. Our motto is Funk for the Future.
That's a beautiful thing. I mean, there's too much of it taken out of schools and formal education. And so, to do that and run with it, man, that's beautiful.
As a musician myself, a young musician, when I started playing the trumpet, funny story, right? Okay. Lady comes to the schools. Hey, we'll get you an instrument. And we, tell all the students, if you get $5, rent the instrument, take music lessons, you do the thing. And getting that $5 back in the 60s, getting that $5 from my father was like, I don't know if that's going to happen, but somehow it did, right? And that program in itself helped lots of young musicians. Nowadays, that $5 would probably be what? $300-400. I have a calculator, but it would be sizable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank goodness he did that for you because we're all the beneficiaries now.
Yeah, yeah. Who would have thought?
So, Benny, speaking of growing up, what drew you to the trumpet, and at what point did you kind of think, "Hey, you know what? This is what I'm going to do."
Well, coming from a very religious background, one of the few instruments spoken of in the Bible are the trumpet, and I think they might have a lute or a harp or something like that. But the trumpet came up a couple times in the Bible, and that stuck with me. And in the music of the time when I was coming up, before we had really electric guitar. Well, there were electric guitars, but before they were really developed into what they are now. And pianos were the keyboards of the day. So trumpets were kind of the all of the brass were the symphonic choice. It's like, oh, when it came to certain moods, bam, that's when the brass came in. Nowadays it would be the keyboards or the electric guitars or whatever, and some brass if you can find it.
So, did you get formal training as well? Do you read music and
Well,
things like that?
I majored in music, and in my high school we had what was called the music careers program, which was meant to educate you into various parts of the music business, playing and not playing. You can make a living in music without playing, being a player. So it's like you open up to that, but then at the same time, the things that you would need to do it if you were a player. It's like you'd have to get keyboard training, you'd have to get ear training, you had to, chord training, things like that. So yeah, they had a program that did that specifically for us. And as a result of that, I was able to graduate, major in music in college. So, that's where Greg and I got together. We did, I did 2 years at St. Mary's College of Maryland. And that was, really not being a student, if you know what I mean. I had an opportunity to go, and I made the best of it. And then when it was over, it's pretty much the next year when I left college. I think within a year we were out with George.
Did you connect first with Greg Boyer or Greg Thomas, or how did that go?
Well, I knew Greg Thomas when I was in junior high school. We were in the same junior high school, Calverton, and we were in the band together at school. So I knew him at school. I met Greg Boyer when I left, well, really before I went to college, because I became aware of the band. When he was in high school, he played with the college band where I went to, St. Mary's. And so when I came there, I knew him, but he didn't, we didn't know each other, outside of that reference until then. Then after that, boom, it's been, 45 years.
Yeah. And who are some of your trumpet heroes early on? Who did you look up to?
There's quite a few of them. Maynard Ferguson was a big influence on me because he dared to be different. When I went to the school that I went to, it was all about Freddie Hubbard, Woody Shaw. And Maynard Ferguson was an outlier. It's like, oh yeah, he plays a high note or a D, but these guys do the thing. But it's like, oh yeah, okay, but there's a path, right? So and actually, I got to meet Maynard on a couple of occasions. Great guy, really, really great guy, inspirational. Clark Terry. I met Clark Terry in college. We did some seminars with him. Wonderful guy, actually incredibly technical player. It's like, oh my God, and I'm trying to think of the ones that I've met. Certain teachers, Fred Irby over at Howard University, even though I didn't study with him, was very inspirational to me. Tom Delane, Rupert Stone, certain teachers. But, of course, Armstrong always is the thing. I remember when I was young, I saw a movie that he did, and it was like, wow, that's interesting. But never thought, oh, I would be playing trumpet and traveling.
And Miles Davis?
Miles Davis, I got into Miles Davis as I was older. You know, I think when I got into Miles Davis, he had started his and he was going anti phase, and he started doing the electronics, which I loved. You know, I loved the electronics. I loved, can I say it, bitches brew, you
You
know,
can say it.
was great. You know, but as I started getting, and then when he started doing the later things, it's like, oh, it started really starting to correlate with, you know, what we were doing with P-Funk. You know, I could see the link as before, and he was, you know, probably doing, you know, 1 2 5 7 type things, you know, and blues things, which, you know, he innovated that. But then when it came across the line, some of his jazz followers felt like, oh, he's playing that funk music, you know. But it's like, yeah, and he was in it. He was very Donald Byrd. Oh my God, really funky, you know. He's probably, you know, in fact, I think as trumpet players go, maybe Woody Shaw, but I felt, well, Woody was very technical, really, really technical. But and Donald Byrd was technical, but he was just funky at the root of everything. He could be like funky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, to what extent were you into funk before you connected with P-Funk?
Some. There's a yes and no. I was into funk as a listener, not so much as a player. I was, you know, we were all, you know, big band jazz players, you know, and that was the thing. I did a stint with the Thad Jones Mel Lewis band around the same time I was working with P-Funk in the beginning. So, you know, at that time they were the #1 big band in downbeat. So, you know, that was a great experience for me to be able to do that kind of thing. But at the same time, I was getting into the situation of, hey, you need to go out and work. So when I started playing with P-Funk, I enjoyed their music as I would hear it on the radio, but it was pretty much a job, you know, and you know, as time goes by, it turns into, oh, now it's been a lifetime.
Did you see their show at all before you became part of it?
The first P-Funk show I ever saw, I was playing. Well, no, we auditioned out at the hotel, and that was like the last audition I think I ever did in my life. And we went into the room. We played the album down. We had studied it. We had it, you know, worked it out. We played the album down, and they hired us, but we didn't come in for a minute. You know, they were still working the thing. And so when we came in, that was pretty much my first show, my first P-Funk show, you know, because all of that time, even though I was a P-Funk fan, we were all playing. You know, we had bands, and that was work. My playing in bands was how I made my money as a kid. You know, if I made some money, it's because we did some shows. So, you know, P-Funk came to town, the Temptations, whoever came to town, we was working that night usually.
And so do you remember where was your first show with them?
I think we flew into Nashville, and I think the show was in Louisville. If memory serves me right, it was in that area. We flew into the Louisville area, somewhere in there, you know, because I wasn't really paying attention. It's like we were going to work.
What were you thinking, though, in terms of, you know, what's going on with Fred and Maceo? And, you know, did you know those guys? Did you meet them? Did you wonder what happened to them?
Well, when we came out, all of that had already been handled. You know, Fred and them were going to do the Bootsy thing. And they just, actually, Rick, Cush, and Maceo hung out just to make sure that the transition was smooth. And, you know, but they knew that at a certain point they were breaking to go with the rubber band on their tour. So when we came in, yeah, we met them, we knew them, but not so much beforehand.
And what was the album that you had to learn right away?
Funkadelic versus the Placebo Syndrome.
Okay.
You know, and yeah. when we came down, we played every song on the album. Actually, I would say note for note, but because it was done with, Fred and them was a 4-piece and we were a 3-piece, there were some changes that were made, but we played it down figure for figure.
What track on that album would you say was the most challenging for the horn parts?
Oh Lord. Well, they were all challenging because it's when Fred and them, when they do the thing, it's different. Funkadelic comes to mind. That was very tricky. Harmonically, and the actual figures themselves, they were different than the average R&B stuff that you hear on the record. So yeah, that was different. But all of it, it's like because it's all of the stuff that they did work at. It wasn't just, oh yeah, okay, they did that. It's the normal thing. You had to look in because every now and then they'll sneak that half step in. And I see many players when they play P-Funk things, horn players that, and they miss that one, and it's like, it doesn't really make that much of a difference, but it's like, yeah. Or when the harmonies come, it's like, oh, okay, that's it's a proper harmony, but it's not what they did on the record.
Mm-hmm. So you had to kind of make up for 2 trumpet players, right? Just being the one.
No, there's no doing that. But it's like just being going back and forth because you'd have the 2 trumpet players. Usually, you have a lead guy and a solo guy. And as it went, I was pretty much more in the lead guy category. And it's like, okay, well, now that there's just one guy, well, you'll have to fiddle around in both categories.
But you
can never do the 2 notes at once.
Yeah, you got to stay within yourself, right?
Oh, Clark could do that, though. He would play 2 horns at one time. It's like, yeah, okay, you've got that one.
What was your first impression, Benny, of George Clinton when you had, a fair amount of exposure to him?
In the beginning, or as time has gone by?
Well, like in the first year or so, when you just sort of got familiar with him.
Well, very different then. The entourage was bigger. We would have 3-4 buses out, the trucks, then the individuals driving. So, the exposure wasn't as deep. But it's just the businessman, boss, performer type thing. And it's like, oh, as a performer, he was all in all the time. And as a businessman, I came in at the height of flashlight era. So, it's like, oh, the business was booming. We were landing the mothership. But really know him personally, and that was the thing. It wasn't like now. Nowadays, you hear a person, they have a record out, you like their record, you know what they eat for breakfast, you know what gym they go to, everything about them. Back then, you could do the job, you do the job, and you go to bed, and it's like, oh, did we get paid this week? Oh, we didn't get paid this week, or we did get paid this week, and that was the extent of it. You didn't have to know everything about everybody. Nowadays, everything you do is on the media. So it's like, oh, I didn't know that. Things that, maybe I didn't know at the time or really weren't relevant, are like front and center now.
Yeah, well, now it's TMI, too much stuff, right?
Yeah, right.
Back then there was some mystery, which was cool. So were you guys kind of a clique in being the, Baltimore P-Funk horns, or, who from the band worked with you guys the most? Was it Gary or?
Okay. When we first came out, we had they brought us out, and it's funny. Was band leader putting together the bride's band, and they had given him it's like, oh yeah, and watch these kids, see what they're doing, that kind of thing. Because we were kids fresh out of college. But the funniest thing was, when we were first hired, getting ready to go out, they had brought in, oh, we're going to bring in this other trumpet player. And, he's got his papers and he's the guy and we'll, the other day, and we'll put him in charge of the horn section and that'll be fine. And as it would go, this guy said, well, the deal that they're offering me at this point is not what I would accept to go out on the road. So he didn't take it, right? And so it's like, okay, it's the last minute. We just go with the guys, see what they can do, and work it out. As the story would go, this trumpet player that they brought in, very good friend of mine. His name is Lloyd Burry, and he went to the high school that I went to. In fact, he was like 2 years, and he had graduated when I came in. So actually, when I came to the school to audition, him being the lead trumpet player, he gave me my audition coming into Douglas. So it's like, oh, we know this guy. It would still be Baltimore Click. That would, it'll all work, but he didn't take the gig. So they left it and wound up being just us. And Cush would overlook us, oh, this, that. But he really left it hands off because he found out as time went by, it's like, oh, pretty much got it covered.
And the first studio record you were on, was it Motor Booty Affair or was it the Parlette record? Do you remember?
It seems like the first thing we did was Parlette, because even though we were the touring horns at the time, the majority of the horn work, the majority of the recording work still went to the Horny Horns, And beyond the Horny Horns, George had other relationships with other people that he was doing things with, and we were just the kids on tour. And it went that way. It was like that for a while.
So I just pulled a few. I have, of course, every one, but I just pulled this to hold it up. So that's the Parlette.
Yeah, we started to loosen up a little bit then.
And
Ron Dunbar got us on that one. That one, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, late 70s. That was when the whole thing, the thing was still right at the peak.
Right.
Yeah. Was it a little overwhelming? Did you kind of have to pinch yourself? Playing in front of such big crowds, just kind of the madness of that scene at the time.
Well, no. Like I said, since junior high school, but since high school, I've been playing actual gigs. Not big money gigs. I think when I started playing gigs, $15 was like, oh, I made $15. So. But we had been playing gigs, some bigger than others, and playing big shows was not a, when I was in high school, we did shows with the Baltimore Symphony. So I wasn't crowd averse, never been crowd averse.
What about, when you got your first solo spot, was that a little butterflies or you took it in stride?
Solo spot with P-Funk?
Yeah.
No, by the time they started spreading solos out to us, it had been enough time that we were comfortable.
So, what can you tell us about the two Gregs? Obviously over the years, Boyer seems like he's very, energetic. And what can you tell viewers about them in terms of, what kind of guys they are?
Oh, okay. Boyer, roommate. So we roomed in college. I slept on the floor at his house. He slept on the floor at my house. We're brothers. We're that type of situation, an incredible musician, incredible writer. He's that guy, top tier, it's I feel blessed to have met him because he's really one of those guys, And Greg Thomas, I've known him since junior high school. Excellent player. It's pretty much the same thing. When Greg left and, did the things that he did with Mace and Prince and all of the other stuff, Greg and I held it in there and, we made it work with two. We did it as a 4-piece. We did it as a 2-piece. So, yeah, he's that guy. And he does that vocal thing that everybody loves.
Yeah. Yeah. It's best Felipe win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you know?
Cheated chess.
Did you know some of the older cats like Mudbone, from that area?
Well, I knew Mudbone indirectly because at that time when I thought about the high school, we all had bands. Skeet and Greg had their band. I had a band. Kevin Oliver had a band. Everybody had bands. Mudbone was with Madhouse. If you're familiar with them, they were a big deal in Baltimore at the time, and so I knew him. I knew of him through that, but I hadn't really met him. However, he was the pipeline that pretty much made it happen. He brought in Skeet brought in us.
Well, speaking of Skeet, what can you tell us about him? What kind of guy is Skeet?
Oh, Skeet's my man. He's down here working with me on the thing. We're laying tracks now. I don't mind talking about it. We're working on the concept of an R&B big band type thing, but it's going to be a funk band with big band instrumentation. And we're working on songs down here in the basement doing the thing. And it's coming along. I'm looking forward. We're about to I plan on launching the website before this tour starts in June. Yeah, I think the tour starts in June. And I'm trying to get the website up and running before then. BaltimoreFunkFoundation.com.
Outstanding. Can't wait for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Benny, as you were part of the whole, we said the thing was at its peak then, but then it came down. Were you surprised when it, kind of changed as much as it did in the early 80s?
Well, it was not so much of a surprise because everything changed during that time. A lot of things were changing. We're also going through that thing of, the transition from horn sections to, keyboards. It's like, oh, we'll get a keyboard patch and then we'll save on the horn. So, at the time, even though P-Funk was not doing great, they were one of the few entities that were really doing, horn section at that time. So, when George did his thing, regardless of, whatever he did at that time, he made a point of bringing the horns. So I can't be mad.
Yeah. Did you feel like, hey, what's happening? This is not cool with all these synths coming in and knocking our horn parts out, and industry wide, it must have been sort of a bummer.
Well, it's the nature of the business, but as for me personally, I was less affected. But I could see like bands that we toured with, that when we were on tour with them before and they had 4 horns or 3 horns or 5 horns. Now you see them today, they might, or at that time, they might have 1 horn or no horns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think of somebody like Cameo. What a big change they had, at that time.
Yeah, so and not just them, but it was because everybody was budget conscious at that time. So it's like, oh, what do you do? And and that's why now so many of the people that you see that are horns, they're going for it's the 1 horn thing. It's like, oh, it's me, which is great if you can do that, the me thing. But horn sections bring you something that I still feel like it's important.
Oh, no doubt. It makes it real. It's authentic, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
there are a lot of patches now and there are apps that you can get and, in the studio, plugins and, that you can get. But I'll blow it myself if it takes 100 times to get it right.
Was there a particular session that you remember from back then that ended up on record that, was like the most fun to do? That was part of the P-Funk thing that you really enjoyed?
No, no, that's a no. All the sessions we did were work, and the fun was if it came out because back then you couldn't do it 100 times. You go in the studio and you're on the clock, so you have to get it. And for many of the songs that we did with P-Funk in the early days, when we went to the studio, we went in cold. We hadn't heard the song. We don't know what key it's in. We don't know if it's fast or slow. We don't know if bebop or hip hop or what it is. Here's a song, make something happen.
I bet you'd be kind of surprised sometimes when you might finally hear the recording that was released, right?
Right. Hopefully you can, if you can look it in the face, you've had a good day, because time, time was the essence. Now, when I'm at home in the studio, I can go to bed at night and say, I'll get up in the morning and I'll do that part, but when you're going in under the clock, you have to do it. You have to do it now.
Did you ever hear some of it on the radio that you were like, hey, I played on that. That's kind of cool. I'm hearing it on the radio.
I hear songs on the radio and it's like, yeah, what's that? And it's like, oh, you played on that. Oh, it's me, So, and at times like that, if it's something that I can hear and it's like, oh my God, it doesn't make me hang my head in shame. It's like, oh, okay, you did a good job.
Are you your own tough critic?
Oh, you have to be. But believe me, there are plenty of tough critics out there too. So, it's like, as critical as they are, I have to be more so because I'm trying to sell it. And you have many choices in trumpet players today. I am just one.
Who are a couple of the guys from back in the late 70s, early 80s in the band that you did sessions with, or they were around, that just especially impressed you with their talent or, what they brought?
Well, I like a lot of what Clip has done. He's really, really blazed the trail of funk. I like the work, a lot of the work that Lodge Curry has done. I did some gospel songs. You mentioned Mudbone. I did some gospel songs with Mudbone. It's like, oh my God, they were, it's like, that's what the world needs, is that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's been a lot of guys, and it's just, I'm just fortunate to have been, included in their creative process.
Yeah, well, Lodge and Clip came around the same time you guys did.
Right. Actually, I think Lodge was out when I came out, but he wasn't. He hadn't become bass player yet. He was management, and I think they were just waiting for the right time for him to start doing that. Clip came in a little after me, but he's have since then come in and done a lot of stuff with different bands. And it's like, yeah, he's got a really, really good creative process. Even the stuff he did over in Europe.
Yeah, I like the 420 stuff and drugs.
Yeah.
Because he seems to have a real reverence and connection with especially the old Funkadelic kind of vibe.
Right.
And some of that doesn't have horns, but that's okay. Or some of it.
Yeah, well, a lot of it doesn't, but a lot of the old Funkadelic, didn't use horns, and a lot of, like Flashlight didn't have any horns, and we play that every night forever.
Speaking of Flashlight, what can you tell us about the, interaction you've had with Bootsy?
I've done a lot of work with Bootsy, and Bootsy's really, really a cool guy. We do what we do. I went to China with Bootsy, so he's a cool guy. I loved his bass playing before I ever got with P-Funk. I really, really liked what he did, and he was very inspirational for my son. So him and my son have a really good relationship. It was his call to get my son to play Woodstock. Because when my son played Woodstock, he played with Bootsy. He played the segment with Bootsy, and Bootsy's like, yeah, use him. And I think he was maybe 14, 13, 15, I don't know. After all this time, years, like sands through the hourglass, it's like, but yeah, he was still young. He was still high school.
Did you ever imagine he might follow in your P-Funk footsteps?
Not actually, but as time went by, I started to see him, as he played drums, start to get more serious about it. Because we used to take him around to the show. I have a picture I show of Ron Ford holding him in his arm when he was a baby at the show, right? Backstage at the Capitol Center. And at some point, he just started banging. I was like, well, why is he would get stuff and he would sit on the edge of the sofa, and he would use the lampshade as a symbol. do the strum thing, right? And then one day it's like, oh, this lampshade is ruined. Look, we need to get him some drums. And he got him the little Muppet Baby set, the little animal Muppet Baby set, right? And we'll see what he does with that. And he tore that up in about 2 months, 3 months. And it's like, okay, now we had to get him real drums. And we've been buying drums ever since. But yeah, he started to show that he was interested. And I had no idea where it would go.
Mm.
But all of his P-Funk work made that happen himself. It's like I didn't have anything to do with that. He went to George. It's like, George, I want to play. George, I want to play. George, can I play? Can I play? Can I play? And anytime if sound check, he would jump on the drums and show, oh, this is what I do. This is what I do. And then he would get with George. Hey, can I play? And then he would get with Bootsy. Hey, Bootsy, can I play? And it's like, yeah, okay. Because see, he has personality. So his personality went out. And then when they gave him the opportunity, he was able to make it happen. When I came in, I met these guys. I was already hired. I was there to work.
Mm. Yeah. So, I mean, he earned it. Sounds like.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how proud are you of that?
Oh, I'm really proud of that. It's good to see that now that we've gotten into the generational aspect of Funkadelic that, as a young person, I never thought of. But as I've been with the band for a while, I deal with George, I talk with him, and I start to find out his insight into family, long-term insights into family. And it's serious. He's serious about that. That's why when you see his kids or his grandkids doing this or that for the organization or in the organization, it's because, yeah, he has a long-term outlook on family. And, it's kind of reflects on my outlook. It's like, yeah, you want to, why not have, if he's going to do it, why not have him do it with me where I'm doing it?
Mm-hmm. How would you say, Benny, over the years, the experience of touring as part of P-Funk has changed?
Well, we've gone from, in the old days, 3-4 buses, and we had 4 limousines that followed us from city to city, and you could get a flight anytime you wanted it because all you had to do was pick up the phone, you could get a flight. To okay, as with all businesses, a little more cost conscious now. The flights aren't as are more of a hassle if you have to take a longer flight because it's less expensive and the expense account. But at the same time, the hotel level of hotels is good. You usually stay in decent hotels. Sometimes less than you would prefer, but usually pretty good. Holiday Inn Express is not the worst thing in the world, but we do the Hiltons and the DDDs and the da. As long as I can sleep, I'm good with that. And the money is like at this point, there's no worry about whether you will be paid or not. So that's always good. So that's the touring experience. The crowd experiences. Big crowds, little clubs, big crowds, whatever, gigs are gigs.
Did you ever imagine, though, it would continue on so long?
No, I didn't see that early on when I first started because, as I told you, it was a gig I'm working. After you've been on for 5-10 years, more than that, then you start to see, oh, it's just a way of life. This is what we do. I would probably see the band going on in some form, as long as there are bands. There'll probably be someone who want to carry the Funkadelic banner, somebody with some real rights to be able to do that, in one form or another. But yeah, it's gone on a lot longer than I had thought it would when I came in at first. Now it's like, oh, funk forever. It's forever.
Yeah. My maybe continue on, sort of like Sun Ra's band continues on and that sort of thing, right?
Right. Yeah. A lot of that, but then, maybe some developments that go in a different direction because everything changes. Funk changes with the music of the day. When we were doing Cinderella Theory or that kind of stuff, it reflected the music of the day. Disco. When disco, I liked disco. I thought disco was funky. Crown Heights Affair and that kind of thing. But at some point, funk was labeled. It's like, oh, funk. That's now it's like a thing. It's like, oh, they're playing funk music in churches now.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, that's a big area where it's gone is in the church. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's the last haven because the radio's not. The only time you hear funk on the radio is gospel channels.
It's ironic too, Benny, because you'll hear funk influence a lot of the music in like commercials and things like that.
Right.
It's in the culture, but then it doesn't really get the radio love, right?
Well, it's the era. The 60s, 70s, and even the 80s was still the, button up, shirt tie, dance and that kind of thing. It was never the old, but, funk was kind of like, the finger in your face.
Yeah, total anti-establishment. Yeah.
That's a better way to put it.
Well, it's anti-establishment, but yet it's so unifying too,
Right, right.
Yeah.
If you're willing to look at the outer fringes of society as we know it, because there are things going on that are cool or not cool. We hurt too, So, that insight of the human experience. And then you put a good beat to it or a good feel, and people feel that this emotion for their real lives.
You mentioned the Cinderella Theory. That was during the Paisley Park era. Did you ever cross paths with Prince during that time?
No. We did shows where he was at, but I never met Prince. I don't know him. I like some of his songs, but I never really got to know him.
Are there like 2 or 3 shows from during your P-Funk history that just really stand out, whether it's, I don't know, one of the Woodstocks or maybe playing Capitol Center when it was, 15,000 screaming maniacs or something, maybe overseas? What are a couple that just really stand out for you?
Okay. We played Madison Square Garden. And I had been touring for a while now, but here's Madison Square Garden. Big deal. We get there, there's some type of problem, the truck doesn't show, we don't have the mothership, we don't have the amps, we don't have anything. It's like we do the show with rental. We used to have costume racks. The costumes, no mothership, no backline. We had can't remember the name of the rental company in New York, but it's the one that everybody uses, right? And we had a couple of Fender twin reverbs, and Bernie had a small little rig, and it was like, it was like we went on and did the thing, and the best part of the gig was, well, damn, the horns had a really good set presence in the show because we didn't have the giant amp wall that we normally have and all of that, so you could hear the horns. Well, and it was probably one of the longest shows we had done at that time because George came out. It's like, oh, we're going to give the show of life because I'm in this situation without the mothership, without the back line, without the costumes. And he came in and we did. And actually, that's the first show that he introduced Zapp, Roger Troutman.
Wow. That sounds like it would have been a cool show to be at,
Well, if you were playing it, was definitely a change because when we came out to that at Madison Square Garden, you had to put up now. You can't say, oh, you can't just lay back and the mothership will always turn it out, or look, these costumes, or look how strong the sound is with this giant amp wall. It's like, no, you're just some musicians playing some songs, and you still got Madison Square Garden full. So you got to bring it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's P-Funk's musicians are up to that challenge. I mean, that's how good and high the level is of musicianship in my mind of, P-Funk. So
yeah, well, I felt that way also. I've always felt it was incredible to come in with musicians of that caliber, and then find out that they're really just down to earth people. Good people to hang out with.
When you said just letting the horns be prominent like that, I'm thinking of that version on P-Funk Live of Clones of Production. With the horny horns really doing sort of almost
right.
Horn a cappella, if you will. Hornapella. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Love hearing that really strong brass sound up front. So was there another one maybe more recent for whatever reason that stands out?
Well, tour with the Chili Peppers, and we did Europe with them, Australia. That was great. That was fun. But I have a line that all gigs just turn into one in the background. Because I've done so many of you go out and it's what we did Isle of Wight, like 100,000, 200,000 people, and you never know, because we do those European tours. You never know when you're going out to a nice little friendly festival in the park, or you're going out to the gigantic thing of thousands and thousands and thousands of people are out here doing the thing.
There's much more to this great Truth and Rhythm interview. Just continue on to the next part of the episode. Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. And become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon, or consider donating at funkinstuff.net. Thank you very much.